G'day. G'day rat bags. How you going? Alright, sorry, I better do an audio test just to make sure that worked. Oh. Yay, woo! Alright, we have had all kinds of mess ups tonight for some reason. Just didn't want to stream. It all said it was fine. It said it was streaming. It wasn't. Didn't want to, but here we are. I kept my cool. And I worked it out. I just went back over everything. And here we are. Alright. And there is, okay, have we got enough audio? Yeah, hopefully it's loud enough. Alright, there is no inebriated guest in the dwelling either, so to interrupt us, so we can get straight into it. Alright, I feel so out of practice. I feel a little bit uncomfortable because this setup's so ad hoc. And yeah, so I don't really quite feel like 100% comfortable. But anyway, let's get on with it. We're up to chapter 7. He started talking about who Phaedrus is and why. Sorry, I'm just going to get myself a bit more comfortable. And I'm sorry, yeah, I got a bit pissed off by my visitor being a dickhead, and I can't exactly remember where we were up to. So I'll back it up a little bit, a page. and we'll keep it on from there. Alright, so grab your cuppa or your snifter or your highball or your smoothie jar or whatever it is that you wet your whistle with. I've got a nice big mug of tea and some lovely warm warm water with lime juice. And that's what I'm drinking. But anyway, let's get into it. Let me just clear my throat, excuse me. I haven't even got the push to mute the mic thing set up or anything. We're a bit ad hoc. All right, let's go. We'll start with what we have, yeah? Otherwise we'll never fucking start at all. So, okay, let's go back to this where he starts talking about Phaedrus's knife. I should now talk about Phaedrus's knife. It'll help understand some of the things that we talked about. The application of this knife, the division of the world into parts and the building of this structure is something that everybody does. All the time that we're aware of millions of things around us. These changing shapes, these burning hills, the sound of the engine, the feel of the throttle, each rock and weed and fence post and piece of debris beside the road, aware of these things but not really conscious of them unless there's something unusual or unless they reflect something we're predisposed to see. We couldn't possibly be conscious of all these things and remember all of them because our mind would be so full of useless details that we wouldn't even be able to think. And from all this awareness, we must select. And what we select and call consciousness is never the same as the awareness because the process of selection mutates it. Yeah, think about that for a minute. So from all this awareness, we must select. And then what we select and call consciousness is never the same as the awareness because that very process of selection mutates the thing itself. We take a handful of sand from the endless landscape of awareness around it and we call that handful of sand the world. And once we have the handful of sand, the world of which we are conscious, a process of discrimination goes to work on it. Well, this is the knife. Oops, I've clicked myself away, excuse me. We divide the sand into parts, this and that, here and there, black and white, now and then. The discrimination is the division of the conscious universe into parts. The handful of sand looks uniform at first, but the longer we look at it, the more diverse we find it to be. Each grain of sand is different. No two are alike. Some are similar in some way and some are similar in another way, and we can form the sand into separate piles on the basis of this similarity or that dissimilarity. Shades of colour in different piles, sizes in different piles, grain shapes in different piles, grades of opacity in different piles, and so on and so on and so on and so on. You'd think the process of subdivision and classification would come to an end somewhere, but it doesn't. It just goes on and on and on. That's really important to be aware of. Excuse me. Classical understanding is concerned with the piles and the basis for sorting and interrelating them. romantic understanding is directed toward the handful of sand before the sorting begins. Remember before when he was talking about, the usual two extremes, the expansive, progressive side, the contractive, traditional, blah blah blah. The spectrum, the two ends. Excuse me. So both are valid ways of looking at the world, although they are irreconcilable with each other. I beg to differ, but that's my lesson. What has become an urgent necessity is a way of looking at the world that does violence to neither of these two kinds of understanding and unites them into one. That's what I think I was put on this earth to work out. As in live, that's my lived experience, to the trip that I'm on or something, whatever it is. So what has become urgent necessity is a way of looking at the world that does no violence to either of those two kinds of understandings and unites them into one. I think quantum physics and quantum understanding is a real good marker that helps us to bring those two dichotomy or bring those two extremes closer, or enables them to balance together more easily. So such an understanding, it will not reject the sand sorting or the contemplation of unsorted sand for its own sake. Such an understanding will instead seek to direct attention to the endless landscape from which the sand is taken. That's what Phaedrus, the poor surgeon, was trying to do. And to understand what he's trying to do, it's necessary to see that part of the landscape, inseparable from it, which must be understood, is a figure in the middle of it, sorting sand into piles. To see the landscape without seeing this figure is to not see the landscape at all, and to reject that part of the Buddha that attends to the analysis of motorcycles is to miss the Buddha entirely. There is a perennial classical question that asks which part of the motorcycle, which grain of sand in which pile is the Buddha. Obviously, to ask that question is to look in the wrong direction, for the Buddha is everywhere. But just as obviously to ask that question is to look in the right direction, for the Buddha is everywhere. About the Buddha that exists independently of any analytical thought, much has been said. Some would say too much, and would question any attempt to add to it. But about the Buddha that exists within analytical thought and gives that analytical thought its direction, virtually nothing has been said, and there are historic reasons for this. But history keeps happening, and it seems no harm, and maybe some positive good even, to add to our historical heritage with some talk in this area of discourse. When analytical thought, the knife, is applied to experience, something's always killed in the process. And that is fairly well understood, at least in the arts. Mark Twain's experience come to mind, in which after he'd mastered the analytical knowledge needed to pilot the Mississippi River, he discovered the river had lost its beauty somewhat. Something is always killed. But what is less noticed in the arts, something's always created too. And instead of just dwelling on what's killed, it's important also to see what's created and to see the process as a kind of death-birth continuity that's neither good nor bad. It just is. We passed through a town called Marmouth, but John doesn't stop even for a rest, and so we go on. More furnace heat into some badlands, and we cross the border into Montana. A sign by the road announces it. Sylvia waves her arms up and down, and I beat the horn in response, but when I look at the sign, my feelings are not jubilant at all. For me, its information causes a sudden inward tension that can't exist for them. They have no way of knowing. We're now in the country where he lived. All this talk so far about classic and romantic understanding must seem a strangely oblique way of describing him. But to get at Phaedrus, this oblique route is the only one to take. To describe his physical appearance or the statistics of his life would be to dwell on misleading superficialities. And to come at him directly would be to invite disaster. He was insane. And when you look directly at an insane man, all you see is a reflection of your own knowledge that he's insane, which is not to see him at all. To see him, you must see what he saw. And when you're trying to see the vision of an insane man, an oblique route is the only way to come at it. Otherwise, your own opinions are going to block the way. There is only one access to him that I can see as possible, and we still have a ways to go. I've been going into all this business of analyses and definitions and hierarchies, not for their own sake, but to lay the groundwork for an understanding of the direction in which Phaedrus went. I told Chris the other night that Phaedrus spent his entire life pursuing a ghost. Well, that was true. The ghost he pursued was the ghost that underlies all of technology, all of modern science, all of Western thought. It was the ghost of rationality itself. And I told Chris that he found the ghost, and that when he found it, he thrashed it good. I think, in a figurative sense, that that's true. The things I hope to bring to light as we go along are some of the things that he uncovered. Now, the times are such that others may find them at last of some value. No one then would see the ghost that Phaedrus pursued, but I think now that more and more people see it, or get glimpses of it in bad moments, a ghost which calls itself rationality, but whose appearance is really that of incoherence and meaninglessness, which causes the most normal of everyday acts to seem slightly mad because of their irrelevance to anything else. And this is the ghost of normal everyday assumptions, which declares that the ultimate purpose of life, which is to keep alive, is impossible, but that this is the ultimate purpose of life anyway, so that great minds struggle to cure diseases so that people may live longer, but only madmen ask why. One lives longer in order that he may live longer, and there is no other purpose. And that is what the ghost says. At Baker, where we stop, the thermometers are reading 108 degrees in the shade. When I take my gloves off, the metal of our gas tank is so hot I can't touch it. The engine is making ominous nicking noise from overheating. Very bad. The rear tyre is worn badly too, and I feel with my hand that it's almost as hot as the gas tank. We're going to have to slow down, I say. What? I don't think we should go over 50, I say. John looks at Sylvia and she looks at him. Something's already been said about them. Something has already been said between them about my slowness. They both look as if they've about had it. Well, we just want to get there fast, John says, and they both walk towards a restaurant. The chain's been running hot and dry too. In the right-hand saddlebag, I rummage for a can of spray lubricant, find it, and then start the engine and spray the moving chain. The chain's still so hot that the solvent evaporates almost instantly. And then I squirt a little oil on, let it run for a minute, and shut the engine off. Chris waits patiently, and then follows me into the restaurant. I thought you said the big slump was going to come on the second day, Sylvia says as we approach the booth they're in. Second or third, I reply. Or fourth or fifth? Maybe. She and John look at each other again with the same expression they showed before. It seems to say, three's a crowd. They may want to go ahead fast and wait for me in some town up ahead. I'd suggest it myself, except that if they go much faster, they won't be waiting for me in some town. It'll be by the side of the road. And he's right. All of us Australians that have travelled in the summer, we all know that. You don't go super fast on the super hot days. You'll blow something up. You just cruise along. Keep everything nice and mellow. Don't overtax anything. Excuse me. Look after your tyres. Alrighty, excuse me, where are we? I don't know how the people here stand this, Sylvia says. Well, it's a hard country, I say with a little irritation. They know it's hard before they come here and they're ready for it. I add, if one person complains, he just makes it that much harder for the others. They've got stamina. They know how to keep going. John and Sylvia don't say much, and John finishes his Coke early, and he's off to the bar for a snort. I go out and check the cycle luggage again and find that the new pack has been compressing a little, and so take up the slack in the ropes and retie them. Chris points to a thermometer in direct sunlight, and we see that it's gone all the way above the scale at 120 degrees. Before we're out of town, I'm sweating again. The cool drying off period doesn't last even half a minute. The heat just slams into us. Even with dark sunglasses, I have to squint my eyes into slits. There's nothing but burning sand and pale sky so bright it's hard to look anywhere. It's just become white hot everywhere, a real inferno. John up ahead is speeding faster and faster. I give up on him and I slow it down to 55. Unless you're just looking for trouble in this heat, you just don't run tyres at 85. A blowout on this stretch would really be it. I suppose they took what I said as a kind of rebuke, but I didn't have that in mind. I'm no more comfortable than they are in this heat, but there's no point dwelling on it. All day while I've been thinking and talking about Phaedrus, they must have been thinking about how bad this all is. That's what's really wearing them down, the thought. Some things can be said about Phaedrus as an individual. He was a knower of logic, the classical system of the system, which describes the rules and procedures of systematic thought by which analytic knowledge may be structured and interrelated. He was so swift at this, his Stanford Binet IQ, which is essentially a record of skill at analytic manipulation, was recorded at 170, a figure that occurs only in one person in 50,000. He was systematic, but to say he thought and acted like a machine would be to misunderstand the nature of his thought. It was not like pistons and wheels and gears all moving at once, massive and coordinated. The image of a laser beam comes to mind instead. A single pencil of light, of such terrific energy in such extreme concentration that it can be shot at the moon and its reflection seen back on Earth. Phaedrus did not try to use his brilliance for general illumination. He sought one specific target and he aimed for it and hit it. And that was all. General illumination of that target he hit now seems to be left for me. In proportion to his intelligence, he was extremely isolated. There is no record of his having had close friends. He travelled alone, always. Even in the presence of others, he was completely alone. People sometimes felt this and felt rejected by it, and so they did not like him, but their dislike wasn't important to him. His wife and family seem to have suffered the most. His wife says those who tried to go beyond the barriers of his reserve found themselves facing a blank. My impression is that they were starved for some kind of affection which he never gave. No one really knew him. And that is evidently the way he wanted it. And that's the way it was. Perhaps his aloneness was the result of his intelligence. Perhaps it was the cause. But the two were always together. An uncanny, solitary intelligence. This still doesn't do it though, because this and the image of a laser beam convey the idea that he was completely cold and unemotional, and this is not so. In his pursuit of what I have called the ghost of rationality, he was a fanatic hunter. One fragment becomes especially vivid now of a scene in the mountains where the sun was behind the mountain half an hour and an early twilight had changed the trees and even the rocks to almost blackened shades of blue and grey and brown. Phaedrus had been there 3 days without food. His food had run out, but he was thinking deeply and seeing things, and he was reluctant to leave. He was not far away from where he knew there was a road, and he was in no hurry. In the dusk, coming down the trail, he saw a movement, and then what seemed to be a dog approaching on the trail, a very large sheepdog or an animal more like a husky, and he wondered what would bring a dog to this obscure place at this time of evening. He disliked dogs, but this animal moved in a way that forestalled these feelings. It seemed to be watching him, judging him. Phaedrus stared into the animal's eyes for a long time, and for a moment felt some kind of recognition. And then the dog disappeared. He realised much later that it was a timber wolf, and the memory of this incident stayed with him a long time. I think it stayed with him because he had seen some kind of image of himself. I'm just going to chop it there because I've just got to grab some lip balm. Oh, I feel like I'm making weird noises because my lips are so dry. Excuse me. I should have done this before I started, but I forgot. Not sponsored, but Lucas Pawpaw Ointment. It's the only pawpaw ointment you'll ever need and should ever use. Australian, Queensland. The original and the best. A photograph can show a physical image in which time is static, and a mirror can show a physical image in which time is dynamic. But I think what he saw on the mountains was another kind of image altogether, which was not physical and did not exist in time at all. It was an image nevertheless, and that's why he felt recognition. It comes to me vividly now because I saw it again last night as the visage of Phaedrus himself. Like that timber wolf on the mountain, he had a kind of animal courage. He went his own way with unconcern for consequences that sometimes stunned people and stuns me now to hear about it. He did not often swerve to right nor to left. I've discovered that. But his courage didn't arise from any idealistic idea of self-sacrifice, only from the intensity of his pursuit, and there was nothing noble about it. I think his pursuit of the ghost of rationality occurred because he wanted to wreak revenge on it, because he felt he himself was so shaped by it. He wanted to free himself from his own image. He wanted to destroy it because the ghost was what he was, and he wanted to be free from the bondage of his own identity. I think a lot of 21st century people can relate to that, yeah? You want to be free from the bondage of your own identity. Anyway, in a strange way, this freedom for him was achieved. And this account of him must sound unworldly, but the most unworldly part of it all is yet to come. This is my own relationship to him. This has been forestalled and obscured until now, but nevertheless must be known. I first discovered him by inference from a strange series of events many years ago. One Friday I'd gone to work and gotten quite a lot done before the weekend, and I was happy about that. And later that day drove to a party where, after talking for everybody too long and too loudly and drinking way too much, went into a back room to lie down for a while. When I awoke, I saw that I'd slept the whole night because now it was daylight, and I thought, oh my God, I don't even know the name of the hosts. And I wondered what kind of embarrassment this was going to lead to. The room didn't look like the room I'd lain down in, but it had been dark when I came in, and I must have been blind drunk anyway. I got up and saw that my clothes were changed. These were not the clothes I'd worn the night before. I walked out the door, but to my surprise, the doorway led not to the rooms of a house, but to a long corridor. As I walked down the corridor, I got the impression that everyone was looking at me. 3 different times a stranger stopped me and asked me how I felt. Thinking they were referring to my drunken condition, I replied that I didn't even have a hangover, which caused one of them to start to laugh, but then catch himself. At a room at the end of the corridor, I saw a table where there was activity of some sort going on. I sat down nearby, hoping to remain unnoticed until I got all this figured out. But a woman dressed in white came up to me and asked if I knew her name. I read the little name clip on her blouse. She didn't see that I was doing this and seemed amazed and walked off in a hurry. When she came back, there was a man with her, and he was looking right at me. He sat down next to me and asked me if I knew his name. I told him what it was and was as surprised as they were that I knew it. "It's very early for this to be happening," he said. "This looks like a hospital," I said. They agreed. "How did I get here?" I asked, thinking about the drunken party. The man said nothing, and the woman just looked down. Very little was explained. It took me more than a week to deduce from the evidence around me that everything before my waking up was a dream, and that everything after was a reality. There was no basis for distinguishing the two other than the growing pile of new events that seemed to argue against the drunk experience. Little things appeared, like the locked door, the outside of which I could never remember seeing, and a slip of paper from the probate court telling me that some person was committed as insane. Did they mean me? It was explained to me finally that you have a new personality now. But this statement was no explanation at all. It puzzled me more than ever, since I had no awareness at all of any old personality. If they had said, "You are a new personality," it would have been much clearer. That would have fitted. They'd made the mistake of thinking of a personality as some sort of possession, like a suit of clothes, which a person wears. But apart from a personality, what is there? Some bones and flesh, a collection of legal statistics perhaps, but surely no person. The bones and flesh and legal statistics are the garments worn by the personality, not the other way round. But who was the old personality whom they had known and presumed that I was a continuum of? This was my first inkling of the existence of Phaedrus many years ago. In the days and weeks and years that have followed, I've learned much more. He was dead, destroyed by order of the court, enforced by the transmission of high voltage alternating current through the lobes of his brain. Approximately 800 mils of amperage at durations of 0.5 to 1.5 seconds had been applied on 28 consecutive occasions in a process known technologically as annihilation ECS. A whole personality had been liquidated without a trace in a technologically faultless act that has defined our relationship ever since. I have never met him, never will. And yet, strange wisps of his memory suddenly match and fit this road and desert bluffs and white-hot sand all around us, and there's bizarre concurrence, and then I know he has seen all of this. He was here, otherwise I wouldn't know it. He had to be. And in seeing these sudden coalescences of vision, and in recall of some strange fragment of thought whose origin I have no idea of, I'm like a clairvoyant, a spirit medium receiving messages from another world. That's how it is. I see things with my own eyes, and I see things with his eyes too. He once owned them. These eyes. That is the terror of it. These gloved hands I now look at, steering the motorcycle down the road, were once his. And if you can understand the feeling that comes from that, then you can understand real fear. The fear that comes from knowing that there is nowhere you can possibly run. We enter a low-rimmed canyon. Before long, a roadside stop I've been waiting for appears. A few benches, a little building, and some tiny green trees and hoses running to their bases. John, so help me God, is at the exit on the other side, ready to pull out onto the highway. I ignore this, and I pull up by the building. Chris jumps off, and we pull the machine back up on the stand. The heat rises from the engine as if it were on fire, throwing off waves that distort everything around it. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the other cycle coming back, and when they arrive, they're both glaring at me. Sylvia says, "We're just angry." Well, I shrug my shoulders, walk to the drinking fountain. John says, "Where's all that stamina you were telling us about?" I look at him for a second, and I see he really is angry. "I was afraid you took that too seriously," I say, and then turn away. I drink the water, and it's alkaline, like soapy water. I drink it anyway. John goes into the building to soak his shirt with water. I check the oil level. The oil filler cap's so hot it burns my fingers right through the gloves. The engine hasn't lost much oil. The back tyre treads down a little more, but it's still serviceable. The chain's tight enough, but a little dry, so I oil it again to be safe. The critical bolts are all tight enough. John comes over dripping with water and says, "You go ahead this time, we'll stay behind." "I won't go fast," I say. "That's all right," he says. "We'll get there." So I go ahead, and we take it slowly. The road through the canyon doesn't straighten out into more of what we've been through, as I expected it would, but it starts to wind upward. Surprise. Now the road meanders a little, and now it cuts back away from the direction in which we should be going, and then returns. And soon it rises a little, and then rises some more. We're moving in angular directions into narrow devil's gaps and then upward again, higher and a little higher each time. Some shrubs appear and then small trees. The road goes higher still into grass and then fenced meadows. Overhead, a small cloud appears. Rain, perhaps? Perhaps. Meadows must have rain. And these now have flowers in them. It's strange how all this has changed. Nothing to show it on the map. And the consciousness of memories disappeared too. Phaedrus mustn't have come this way. But there was no other road. Strange. It keeps rising upward. The sun angles toward the cloud, which has now grown downward to touch the horizon above us, in which there are trees, pines, and a cold wind comes down with pine smells from the trees. The flowers in the meadow blow in the wind, and the cycle leans a little, and we're all suddenly cool. I look back at Chris, and he's smiling. I'm smiling too. And then the rain comes hard on the road with a gust of earth smell from the dust that has waited for too long, and the dust beside the road is pocked with the first raindrops. This is all so new, and we are all so in need of it, a new rain. My clothes become wet, and goggles are spattered, and chills start and feel delicious. The cloud passes from beneath the sun, and the forest of pines and small meadows gleams again, sparkling where the sunlight catches small drops from the rain. We reach the top of the climb, dry again, but we're cool now, and we stop, overlooking a huge valley and the river below. I think we've arrived, says John. Sylvia and Chris have walked into the meadow among the flowers under pines, through which I can see the far side of the valley away and below. I'm a pioneer now, looking out onto a promised land. And we're going to leave it there at the end of chapter 7. And that's actually the end of part 1 too. So we'll pick it up next time with part 2 and the start of chapter 8. So if this is all a bit confusing, or you don't know, if you haven't started thinking, you can go back and to night number 1, and you can listen your way through and catch up to us if you like. If we're reading and you're listening, and something that we read sparks a question, or maybe you want to talk about the interpretation of what we've just read, because especially with this book, sometimes I don't quite exactly get what he's saying at first read, feel free to jump in with any kind of discussion or anything like that. Discuss amongst yourselves, or, hopefully I'll catch it. I've only got one screen at the moment, so it's a little bit hard. I'm kind of relying on I'm relying on the actual stream, and so it's got a bit of a delay. So if a comment comes through, it doesn't show up sometimes for 10 or 15 seconds because the stream delay. And also, sorry about, you can probably hear that noise. That's my upstairs neighbour. Just she's a bit thumpy. So yeah, that's that. Thank you for joining me on Catching the Replay, if that's what you're doing, and putting up with my kind of weird setup at the moment. So should be back tomorrow night. I know I said that last time and then I didn't come back for a couple of days, but I'm just kind of getting back in the groove of things. I don't really want to talk too much about it because it's just dumb. I just feel weird about everything and I can't get my shit together, but I don't really have anything to complain about. So I'm not going to complain. No, everything's good. We're slowly just, I'm trying to just not be impatient. I'm trying to just work every day towards towards the daily goals, and then do a little bit towards the more longer term kind of goals, and just try and keep a bit of a track in mind, rather than just I'll go over here, I'll go over there, I'll go over here, and just end up distracted all the time. Excuse me. But autumn is always, it's my favourite season pretty much. If there's snow, then winter's my favourite season. But if there's no snow, then autumn is my favourite season. So, and I like getting the garden ready for a winter harvest, for the winter veggies like cauliflower and broccoli and things like that, and carrots and lettuce and all sorts of good stuff. And just getting ready to do that kind of hibernating thing where getting my winter missions happening, because summer life is very different to winter life, anyway, unless you live in the tropics or something. I don't know, who knows. All right. Lots of us don't always find it easy to stick around and keep breathing, okay? And if you're one of those people, then number one, you're not alone, okay? And number two, please consider just keeping on breathing for the time it takes to go and to the description box and look up one of the numbers and just call them and just have a chat to somebody. And you can do whatever you want after that. Just in the now, if it's just pick the phone up, okay? Because I need ya, and the planet needs ya, and all the other fucked up misfits that struggle to fucking find reasons to, keep going on each day. We need you to. And I'm not going to blow wind up your ass and tell you that fucking life gets better, because life's just life, and it's just like this, and it's fucking just how it is. But that's not the point. Yeah, the point is that we get better. We get better at it. Yeah, and the longer we stick around, the more chances we've got of meeting fucking cool people. Because they're out there. They're out there. Alright. I love you heaps, rat bags. Keep breathing. Fucking hold fast. Just fucking don't let go, okay? And I will see you hopefully tomorrow. And I don't know what time, because I don't know what time things happen. But I'll try to get a schedule together by the end of the week. Or just over the next couple of weeks, I'll try to get a fucking streaming schedule and maybe an upload schedule. Until then, if you got a channel, drop your fucking channel name or your link down below. Oh, and also, please, we haven't drawn a winner for the book, for the new Jordan Peterson book. So if that's still open, I'll put the link to the entry video in it. I know it's been a long time, but we'll draw it as blah 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 as soon as I get my furniture and stuff here and I've got a proper streaming set up. We'll draw the winner for that. So I will leave the link to that video, and if you want to enter that for a chance to win the copy of Jordan Peterson's new book that we just read before this one that we're reading now, go and check out that video and leave a comment, and good luck to you. Alright, love yous, see yous, and all that, the drill. if you can, if you've got any spare anything, if you can find it in your heart, to please donate to one of the legitimate charities for the Northern Rivers flood victims. They really, really fucking need your help, because the government are kind of dicks, and the damage is just beyond what anyone can even comprehend. And every little bit really helps. And the community there are really amazing and really wonderful, and they really, really deserve a chance to rebuild and become a new iteration of the incredible community that I think everybody's realizing they have there. All right, thank you, that would be great. See you later, bye.